Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna
Purnipad Paramhamsa Pariprajukacharya Ashto Tarasati Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prams Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kundigiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamana Maya Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Gaur.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Glad you could be with us tonight, and welcome to everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. We are reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd canto, 6th chapter, speaking about the universal form. Tonight we'll be starting with text number 33. Very eager to hear everyone's comments and questions, and if you'd like to lead tonight's closing kirtan, please send me a direct message. We would love to hear from you. And we're so happy, as I mentioned, that you could be back with us tonight, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Akendra Prabhu, and thank you for the kirtan. Thank you to all. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Padhyam Bhagavato Jagye Shushusha Dharma Siddhaye Tasyam Jata Pura Shudro Yadvritya Tushyate Harihi. Thereafter, service was manifested from the legs of the personality of Godhead for the sake of perfecting the religious function. Situated on the legs are the Shudras, who satisfy the Lord by service. Purport: service is the real constitutional occupation of all living entities. The living entities are meant to render service to the Lord, and they can attain religious perfection by this service attitude. One cannot attain religious perfection simply by speculating to attain theoretical knowledge. The Jnani division of spiritualists go on speculating only to distinguish the soul from matter. They have no information of the activities of the soul after being liberated by knowledge. It is said that persons who only mentally speculate to know things as they are, and who do not engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, are simply wasting their time. Let me just close the door here, and I'll be with you in a moment. Good. Om Jnana Timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadhati Shapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Chatapada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lodita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhye Vacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Padbhyam Bhagavato Jagye Shushusha Dharma Siddhaye Tasyam Jata Pura Shudra Yadvritya Tushyate Harihi. The universal form has been manifesting progressively the four parts of his body, and the occupational order of human society with which each part is associated. The Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas have already been manifested, and now his thighs and the Shudras are appearing. Dharma Siddhaye, Shushusha Dharma Shushusha Dharma Siddhaye, for the perfection of Dharma. And Srila Prabhupada expands the concept here of service to so that it applies to all human beings. It's not just the proper engagement for a particular section of human society, although that's also there. But service is essential for the perfection of every varna, every occupational division. Atapumbir Dvija Shreshta Varnashrama Vibhagasha Sunustitasya Dharmasya Samsiddhi Aditoshana. The duty of each varna is to act in such a way as to satisfy the personality of Godhead. And Bhaktya Mama Bijananti, the Lord is satisfied by service. So as Prabhupada points out here, the business of the Brahmin may be to think, to teach. But if the Jnani doesn't come to the point of devotional service, then his mental speculation is a useless waste of time. One may go through the trouble of discriminating between matter and spirit and understand Aham Brahmasmi, I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul. But then what do I do as spirit soul? I have to render service. So the perfection of knowledge is not yet reached until one comes to that point of service. Brahmabhuta prasannatma nushochati nakamshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktam madbhaktim labhate pura. Yes. It is clearly said here that the principle of service was generated from the legs of the Lord for the sake of perfecting the religious process. But this transcendental service is different from the idea of service in the material world. In the material world, no one wants to be a servant. Everyone wants to become the master, because false mastership is the basic disease of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul in the material world wants to lord it over others. Illusioned by the external energy of the Lord, he is forced to become a servant of the material world. That is the real position of the conditioned soul. The last snare of the illusory external energy is the conception of becoming one with the Lord. And due to this conception, the illusioned soul remains in the bondage of material energy, falsely thinking himself a liberated soul and as good as Narayan. So no one wants to be servant. We want to be master in one way or another. The example is there of the young business executive that Srila Prabhupada met at Dainapan, who was sort of sent to greet Srila Prabhupada before the big men came in. And he presented his business card to Srila Prabhupada with a bow in the Japanese tradition. And then when the top men came in, they each presented their business card and bowed. And after the big men had left and Prabhupada was alone with the younger man, Prabhupada was discussing with him spiritual topics and asked him what his goal in life was. And the young man took what was now a stack of business cards and took his card from the bottom and put it on top. This is the aspiration of the conditioned soul. We don't want to be on the bottom. We don't want to be on the feet of the Lord. We don't want to be servants. We want to be masters. And the whole world is in competition on that principle. But spiritually, service is relishable. To be servant is the highest position, and still higher is to be servant of the servant. So that point Srila Prabhupada is making. And there's a question here. Oh yes, and the last snare of Maya. This person, it's a un engaño, a trick of Maya, that we're lured on with the prospect of becoming masters, and more we're entangled in our position of forced servitude to the illusory energy in so many forms, in the form of wife, in the form of home, in the form of community, society, in the form of our senses. We're all serving, and yet we're thinking ourselves master, serving our dogs, and we're masters. Vijay Krishna, to what measure is the transcendental loving service of the Lord capable of helping me to make good use of my time instead of wasting it. 100%. 100%. Prabhupada will discuss this as the purport goes on. Panchatattva, it seems like the last snare of Maya is not so commonly arrived at. After all, how many persons go around saying that they are God? But could the attitude of being the enjoyer be synonymous with this mistaken idea of being God? Yes, of course, there have been times in the 1960s, it was very prominently preached that one is God. We remember a poster of the day where one guru was pictured, and beneath it was, be still and realize that you are God. So sometimes it's quite explicit. Sometimes it's quite explicit, and sometimes it's inherent. One wants to become king. One wants to become CEO, which means essentially at the top of the heap. One wants to be master of the home. What is a man's home is his castle. So if he can't be king of the country, at least he can become king when he comes home. He has that desire, which now, of course, is not to be fulfilled, even in theory, because the idea that the man is the king, is king of the house, is like, the queen let him get away with that. So in any case, yes, one wants to be the center of things. God is the center of everything. Isha Vashamidam Sarvam. And we want to be the center of things as a rock star. You know, young people want to be rock musicians, and one suspects that that they picture themselves at the center of the crowd on stage, being adored by fans. So, yes, not explicitly God, with all the philosophy that goes with it, but a sort of instinctive drive to be number one. Tulsi Priya, if everyone who gets angry when they're offered the,
Shall I read it?
Please.
I just kind of was cutting a joke. I said everyone who gets angry when they're cut off on the freeway or who cuts someone else off thinks they're God to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Tom Wolfe's depiction of the big wheeler dealers on Wall Street, the term he coined for them was masters of the universe, because there they are, on the 50th floor of some New York skyscraper, cutting multi-million-dollar deals, and essentially acting as masters of the universe, gods. Saraswati says, arrogance, a quote my daughter found from a meme. Arrogance and fear still keep you from learning the simplest and most significant lesson of all, which is it's all about you. Oh, it's not about you. Okay, it's not about you. Yeah. And there's an earlier comment from Kendra. Yes, it's nice to be reminded that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, prays to be the servant of the servant, and he is the supreme enjoyer. So you must know something we don't. Yes. Even the supreme enjoyer desires to take the position of servant, because that position, servant of Krishna, is so relishable. Thank you for that. Let's see. Continuing. It is actually better to be a Shudra than to be a Brahmin and not develop the service attitude, because that attitude alone satisfies the Lord. Every living being, even if he be a Brahmin by qualification, must take to the transcendental service of the Lord. Both Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam support that this service attitude is the perfection of the living entity. A Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra can perfect his occupational duties only by rendering service of the Lord, service unto the Lord. A Brahmin is supposed to know this fact due to his perfection in Vedic wisdom. The other sections are supposed to follow the direction of the Brahmin Vaishnava, one who is a Brahmin by qualification and a Vaishnav by action. That will make the entire society perfect in regard to the order of its social construction. A disordered society cannot satisfy either the members of the society or the Lord. Even if one is not a perfect Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, but takes to the service of the Lord, not caring for the perfection of his social position, he becomes a perfect human being simply by developing the attitude of service to the Supreme Lord. In the verse we have, Tushyate Harihi, Yatvritya Tushyate Harihi. Service is that occupation by which one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada used to quote, Yasmin Tushte Jagat Tushte. When Krishna is satisfied, then everyone becomes satisfied. There are two meanings here. One is the meaning that Srila Prabhupada comments on most extensively, that we're all meant for service. And the other is that we need the service contingent in the social body also. The Shudras are also an important element for the proper running of the social body. That Prabhupada points out, you can't despise your feet just because they're less important than the head. So the Shudras also play an important part in the social order. And they're supposed to perform their duties like everyone else for the satisfaction of Krishna. And then, Yatap pravitir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam karmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati mahan. A human being becomes perfect by performing his prescribed duty for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When this system is not followed, then we have a topsy-turvy society where no one's happy, where the Kshatriyas are begging and the Shudras are running everything, and the Vaishyas are considered the highest class of men. And the Brahmins are useless, really. Who would want to be a Brahmin? So everything becomes ruined We get a society with no spiritual vision, no true knowledge, no direction toward the real goal of life. So the real goal of life is service for the satisfaction of the personality of Godhead. And all the orders are meant for this. Saraswati, is any spiritual progress made in bhakti isn't lost? Is any spiritual progress made in bhakti isn't lost? Oh, well, let's see. I guess it's if any spiritual progress made in bhakti isn't lost. Why is it that it seems if I take 2 steps forward on the path, I'm still taking many steps backwards? It seems progress made is lost. No, that's only seems. And the same thing in any practice. It may seem on some day or other that we're not making progress or that we're going backwards or falling backwards. But that's only an impression, only apparent. I related how I was talking with a music teacher some month or so back. And we don't really need him to tell us, but the students practice their musical lessons. And some days they feel like they're on top of things, and sometimes they feel like they're on the bottom of the heap. That's the nature of practice. But it's also the nature of practice that it makes perfect. So we're meant to continue with our practice patiently. On the days where it's great, where it feels great, then that's wonderful. And on the days where it feels that we're not going anywhere, we should understand that that's simply the nature of practice. It doesn't always feel to us that we're making progress. But as long as we stick to the process, we are. Therefore, utsaha nischaya dharya tatat karma kuvarta. Tulsi Priya has her hand up.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my obeisances. So this idea, Prabhupada really wanted to establish Varnashram, and in one sense, Varnashram already exists as a perverted reflection. He wanted something based on land and cows in service to Krishna. So my question is, we have these different orders, social orders, because people have different material desires. And so is it that this is yukta vairagya? And can a person who is acting in these orders, can they be considered pure devotees if they're acting perfectly within their ashrams and their orders of life? Or is it meant that through this process, we ascend gradually to the point of renunciation, and at that point you become a pure devotee? I mean, I know there are grihastas that are pure devotees and people in different orders, but I'm just wondering, for the general conception, is it that this is a means of purification, or is this part of the whole process of Krishna consciousness by which you can perfect yourself even while living in the world and working towards, maintaining your material body and all of that? Is my question making sense?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a section of religious people who think that the perfection is to perform one's duties in Varnashram very nicely. That's their idea, that one should perform this is the most important thing, to perform one's duties. And especially the Brahmins, they have so many Brahminical duties, and by performing these Brahminical duties, they especially fulfill the purpose of their human life. This is dharma, to be perfectly situated or to be well situated in Varnashram. But Dharma Svinushtita Pumsam Vishvakshena Katasuyat Nodpadayed Yadiratim Shamevi Kevalam. Bhagavatam says if one performs one's duties in Varnashram very nicely, but doesn't develop an eagerness to hear about Krishna, then he's simply wasting his time. Whereas on the other side, Sangsit here, Haritoshanam, the purpose of Varnashram of Vibhavishna, the divisions of Varnashram, is to satisfy Krishna. So the Varnashram is not an end in itself, and it's not that simply by performing Varnashram one attains or one has reached perfection. That verse was quoted by Ramananda Roy, Varnashrama Acharavata Purushena Parapuman Vishnu Aradyate Panta Nanyatato Shakaram. One has to perform one's duties in Varnashram. There's no other way to satisfy the personality of Godhead. But this verse, as far as being an expression of perfection in human life, was rejected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. No, this is not the highest goal. Speak something else. So why was it put forward? Because it was put forward because people think this way, that just by performing Varnashram, everything is accomplished. Krishna is satisfied, everything is there. So there's something to that. Krishna does become satisfied when we're performing our prescribed duties. But more than that, one has to act for Krishna. If I'm performing my prescribed duties very nicely and not becoming Krishna conscious, then I'm wasting my time. And even if, as Prabhupada points out at the end of the purport, even if I neglect the Varnashram duties or somehow or other I'm not situated properly in the Varnashram culture, if somehow I can render devotional service to Krishna, then that's the point. Then, therefore, Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parajyaja Mamekam Sharanam. You can give up all these other duties and just surrender to me. There'll be no full reactions. So, yeah, I think that answers your question. By the way, while it comes to my mind in Ecclesiastes, Kohelet says, I saw servants riding on horses and kings walking on the ground. And he laments this as another evil under the sun. So even there, although he's not a follower of the explicit Varnashram system as expounded in Vedic literature, he recognizes the same principle, that society is supposed to be ordered in such a way that there are different sections of human beings with different privileges and responsibilities. While I'm thinking about it, at the beginning, you said, is it that we're situated in a particular Varna according to our desire? It's our desire and our qualification. A Vaishya might wish he were king, but that doesn't qualify him to be a king or to be a Kshatriya. It's not only desire, but it's the, you can say my destiny, according to what I've been awarded by nature's arrangement. I may have the desire to be king, but if I've been awarded the nature, the external nature of a Shudra, then I'm not a king.
Just
I'm not a king. And even if I'm born in a family of kings, if I don't have the qualities of a king, then I'm not fit to be king.
just to clarify, I meant that the Varnashram system exists in itself because living entities have, or human beings have, material desires. And so this is a way of ordering society according, because we have desires in the first place to enjoy, and not just to be
But the desires
Yeah.
we all have desires to enjoy, but we have to act according to our prescribed duties. Not just, the modern thing is just follow your dream. Whatever your desire is, go for it. And that's not recommended by the Vedic literature, just whatever you think, whatever you want. That all ends up causing unhappiness for ourselves and others. We should know what our duties are. And we should know more than that, the person meant to be satisfied by our duties. And we should be acting in devotional service. Then, finally, I have to give up my materials. You talked about renunciation. Real renunciation means giving up my material desires and desiring to please Krishna's, satisfy Krishna's desires. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tat pratem nirmanam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti rupshate.
Thank you.
Tattva, you had your hand up. Did you put it down in frustration? Or?
No, I didn't put it down in frustration, Guru Maharaj, because the answers were so complete. I was just thinking about the state of the world. There's so much lying going on. All of the varnas, the so-called varnas, or the people that are acting in these positions and not necessarily being qualified to be them, are lying and lying and lying, and everybody's fighting with each other. This country is all full of opposing camps, mostly based on lies. So I guess
every country.
Yes, every country. So what is going to change all that? It's a severe problem right now. People are ready to kill each other over either complete or partial falsehoods. And anybody who even appears to be telling the truth is only telling a little part of it.
Therefore, Kalir Doshanite Rajan, then Asmin
Asti Eko Mahan Guna.
Asti Eko Mahan Guna. Kirtana Deva Krishna Mukta Sangha. The only good thing is Krishna Kirtan, and that can do everything. By Krishna Kirtan, the whole atmosphere of the world can change. So Kirtan means chanting Hare Krishna, means distributing this message of Bhagavatam. That can change everything.
I had posted a quote from Srila Prabhupada just recently, where in only a few sentences he completely addressed the issue of climate change, which has become a severe problem right now. And he said everyone just has to take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Everything will be fine.
Yes. That's the climate that has to change, the materialistic climate of the world. Murari Gupta says, thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Murari Gupta says, because we are qualitatively the same as Krishna, how is the being supreme aspect of Krishna accommodated for the jiva in Vaikuntha? It's not, because supreme means quantitatively the greatest. We're qualitatively one with Krishna, but we're not quantitatively one. So the being supreme aspect of Krishna is not accommodated in the jiva in Vaikuntha. It's accommodated. It's accommodated in Krishna in Vaikuntha. He's supreme, and everyone else is his servant. Ekli Ishwar Krishna, Arsabhritya. So that's the problem, that we're qualitatively one with Krishna, and then we think that we're quantitatively one also. So in that way, we become supreme either by establishing ourselves with God or as God or becoming one with God. So being supreme, that's not what we are. We're not supreme. We're subordinate. And that's the fundamental mistake. We're thinking that somehow we're supreme, although we're being kicked by the shoes of Maya. But you can be better than supreme. The Madbhakta Puja Vyadika, Krishna says, my devotee is better than myself. So one can reach the position where the supreme is becomes your devotee. The Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. So in that, but he's not desiring that let me be worshipped by Krishna, let me be served by Krishna. But Krishna is desiring, let me serve my devotee. Vijay Krishna. But what still confuses me is that although sadhana bhakti is all about the cultivation of humility, we will never be able to escape from wanting to also be supreme, even if it is in a very tiny, infinitesimal way, because we are parts and parcels of the Supreme. Isn't it natural for the part and parcel to serve the whole? And if the whole is supreme, shouldn't his parts and parcels also try their best for also becoming supreme, even if it is in a very small way? How can the Supreme go on being supreme if his parts and parcels do not cooperate in favor of the aspect of his personality? The Prabhupada said, become great by serving the greatest. Not become great by serving the greatest. This, again, I think we've talked about this attitude that I have to be supreme. That's not the Vaikuntha mood. Even among the devotees, the mood is there of appreciating the other devotees, not of just, sometimes the mood is there. Goloka Vrindavan devotee wants to surpass the other devotees in serving Krishna. But there's not this absolute desire to just be number one that we find in the material world. The devotees are happy to be defeated by the service of the other devotees. In the third canto later, we'll find that the other devotees, the Lakshmis who are singing the glories of the Lord, stop to hear the humming of the bees who are glorifying the Lord by their humming. They don't think, bees. They respect that they're serving Krishna so nicely. Yovan Ananda asks, if thinking oneself as God is the last snare of Maya, what is the first snare? First snare is to think that I'm this body, or to think that I have some connection with this material energy, and that I can enjoy this material energy. Purusha prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jangrina. Living entity who becomes connected with the material energy thinks that he can enjoy the products of material energy. Karanam gunasangasya, that becomes the cause of his birth and death in higher and lower species. It starts off, let me enjoy, and it ends up with, let me be the supreme. Praveen, when Prabhupada was in Grahastha ashram, can we say he was still a pure devotee? If so, then why did he take sannyas? As pure devotees, his dress does not require sannyas. Why then did he accept sannyas? Sannyas does not make much difference in the minds of Western countries. Then why sannyas? First of all, of course, Prabhupada was a pure devotee in any ashram. But sannyas, Prabhupada said, is one thing is it's a necessary function of the varnashram system. That's one thing he said. But one accepts sannyas to please the Lord, paratmanishtam. Eta sastaya paratmanishtam. Adhyasita purvataram madhvi. One takes sannyas to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas and for the service of the Lord. And aham tirishami durantaparam, to cross over the limits of the material energy. One may be, the flies here consider themselves enjoyers. And I consider myself an enjoyer. So this way, the flies and I are on the same platform. So one may be a pure devotee, but he doesn't think I'm a pure devotee. He thinks I'm still entangled by the material energy. So that's one reason. Even the pure devotee accepts the renounced order of life to get free from material existence. Aham tirishami durantaparam. And for the service of the lotus feet of Mukunda. That's the real point. And one thinks, and one gets greater freedom. Because Prabhupada accepted sannyas, he left behind, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his accepting sannyas, he left behind the small world of home and family for the greater world of Krishna and all humanity. To be situated in Grihastha life means to be performing the duties of a householder. So the householder is concerned with getting his daughters married, with taking care of home affairs and so on, and serving the Lord. But a sannyasi leaves behind the duties of family life and focuses on the duty of carrying out the spiritual master's orders and spreading Krishna consciousness for one's own sake and for the benefit of others. Doesn't Srila Prabhupada say, Tulsi Priya, that we are in the material world in the first place because we want to be Krishna? So maybe the last snare is also the first snare, or perhaps there's only one snare. Well, one snare is sex life. This verse comes up tomorrow. Today, in our Bhagavatam class, Pumsastriya Maitini Pavameta. This is one way of being God. One has sex and one thinks that one is now the enjoyer. I use the enjoyer. We are in the material world in the first place because we want to be Krishna, well, because we want to enjoy. And the big attraction for enjoyment is sex. So you could say that another answer to that question, what is the first snare of Maya? That's the first snare of Maya, sex enjoyment, by which everything expands, Griha, Kshetra, Sutta, Apta, and Janasya Moho Yamaham Mameti. And by then one becomes illusioned and thinks, I'm this body, and so much is mine. That's the first snare. And then one gets past that one. one leaves behind family life and accepts sannyas, or one by philosophical discrimination understands that this family life is not real life. Generally, then one leaves it behind. And then one takes sannyas, and then one thinks that he's Narayan. So he got free from the first snare, only to be trapped by the second, or the last snare. One person was advocating, Saraswati says, sannyas for women, and didn't want to be under control of family in old age, like sons taking care of her. Yeah, that's called confusion. Sannyas for women is not accepted in Vedic culture. Someplace in an early letter, Prabhupada said that any woman claiming to be a sannyasi is either a cheater or a prostitute. In any case, sannyas is not there. And it's kind of foolishness. No, I don't want to be a Shudra. I don't want to be a woman. I don't want to be a this. I don't want to be a that. I have to change my position. No. That will be further unhappiness. One should be, of course, women can become sannyasis in spirit by full dedication to the service of the Lord. That's the essence of sannyas. But just externally to adopt the principles of sannyas so that we're not under anyone, we're not under anyone's control. No, that's not the solution. Tulsi Priya, therefore, the first sinful will of the living entity is to become the Lord. And the consequent will of the Lord is that the living entity forgets his factual life and thus dreams of the land, and thus dream of the land of utopia, where he may become one with the Lord. Yeah. So from that point of view, there was an earlier comment that perhaps there's only one snare. Yeah, let me enjoy. Okay. We're at 157. So we can thank you all and stop here and finish with kirtan. And who's our
Haridas
kirtan?
Prabhu. Haridas
Haridas
Prabhu put
Prabhu.
a nice comment in the chat.
Oh, maybe you could read it for me because it's, oh, there it is. 6.1 translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he's obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. Yes. Thank you, Haridas Prabhu. All right. Kirtan.
Hey, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupada Purnam Supari Prajacharya Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Adanta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kunikiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navdeep Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mahi Ki Jai, Ramana Mahi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Gurudev. Really nice.
Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Thank you, Panchatattva. Haridas Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hey, Purva Kamalini, Hare Krishna.
Jai.
So, Maharaj, where are you now?
Nueva Vranja Mandala, the farm about an hour outside of Madrid in Spain,
Wow.
with beautiful temperatures in the high 90s.
And is it midnight there or 1 a.m?
2 in the morning.
2 a.m. Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
Did you go to sleep and then set an alarm, or you didn't go to sleep yet?
No, I took rest and got up.
Oh boy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, all glory.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kante, Jaya.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Tulsi Priya.
Thank you everyone for being here. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jayādvaita Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Mhm.